Hello everyone, thought I'd give you a little update on what I've been doing recently. One of the things I've finished is this 15mm cavalry fort for the game of Pony Wars. The game requires a fort on the edge of the table, in fact only half a fort, but I thought I might as well produce the entire thing and then just have it half on and half off the table. It's where the various cavalry troops emerge from during the game, and this I printed up from files that I purchased quite a while back now from Nazhevitz Model Bau. I'm not entirely happy with it. It's all right. It was a little bit badly planned or designed, I suppose you could say, because if you want to have a gate, which obviously it requires, then the gate section is wider than the palisade sections, which means unless you have a gate on both sides of the fort, which is a bit ridiculous, then you have to sort of set the gate back a little bit. And have these sort of smaller pieces just blocking off the gap that creates, and rather than the having a sort of blockhouse kind of towers, which I would have liked, this has got things that are more just like sentry posts, I suppose you could call them, and also the walkways aren't wide enough to put a base of figures on, because they're to scale. If you had individually, based figures, then they would fit, but that's not part of the game. But it's only a sort of token representation of the fort, really. I'm not gonna, worry too much about it not being playable in other games. It's just there to be a little bit of a represent where the troops come on the table during the game. Let's give you a bit of a view around it, bit of a close-up of parts of it. These are the stables, and then you have officers' quarters down there. And over here you have a sort of barracks. Okay, enough on that. What I might do is use this now as a backdrop to show you some of the Pony Wars figures that I've added to my collection now. Okay, now the game of Pony Wars requires 2 smoke signal sets, so this is going to be one of them. This is a group again from Hovels, and I haven't actually found another range that does a smoke signal set, so I'm probably going to have to buy another one of these to meet the requirements of the game. It's quite a nice little group of figures. The horses are identical. If you saw a previous video that I put up, an update that I put up that featured of Travois, it's the same pair of horses, which is a bit odd, but never mind. And what I've done is base them and then placed a little the thinnest copper brass wire that I could find. Didn't bother to paint it, because whatever colour you paint it, it's going to be obvious anyway, a bit intrusive, so I've just left it the sort of reflective metal, and then on that I've put some bits of, it's not cotton wool, it's kind of cushion filler that I got from a kind of hardware shop once, going up in the sky to represent the smoke signals, and that's detachable, so it makes it easier to store. But yeah, quite pleased with that effect. but as I say, I need to do another one now because the game requires two, or there's a possibility that you can have two on the table at any one time. Okay, and this is just a sorted group of figures that I've painted up. 4 of them are from taken out of a bag of Blue Moon mounted cowboys, and one of them is an irregular figure. So this one here is just meant to represent the Lone Ranger. It's not an exact match for the way he looked, but it was you need the Lone Ranger in the game of Pony Wars, and it was the closest I could find. I've sort of modelled a mask using some milliput. You won't be able to see it at this range, but yeah, he's going to be the Lone Ranger. And then this is an irregular figure. Originally I thought I could use it as Tonto, but he doesn't look anything like the TV version of Tonto, so I thought I would probably use him as a scout, just as an ordinary scout instead. Then this fairly dynamically posed figure here is going to be another character in the game called Dando, who is a sort of Indian fighter. And then the two at the end here, I just picked, at random really, and thought they would do for mounted civilians or cowboys. You're going to need 5 figures as cowboys, or even more villainous characters such as gun runners and so on that come into the game. But anyway, as I say, I just picked those at random, and eventually I'm going to have to get around to painting a lot more civilians and other characters for the game, so I'll dip into that bag of Blue Moon figures again. But that's everything. The fort and the smoke signal set and those 5 figures is everything I've done this last couple of weeks, last month or so, for the game of Pony Wars. So let's go on to something else now. And next up I've done another 2 bases of Celtic war bands, 2mm scale, for the game of Strength and Honour. I'm going to zoom in, but you really won't get much of an idea of what these figures look like. They're 3D prints that I printed myself from STL files I purchased from Project Wargamer. Really amazing figures. So much more detail on them than you get on metal 2mm figures, and yeah, it's really fun printing them up and painting them. I seem to have slowed down a little bit though on my Strength and Honour project. I'm going to have to accelerate a little bit. I'm currently modelling some scenery for it, but I still need a fair amount to produce an army for the Battle of Watling Street scenario. And again, because I can't focus in too much detail on these figures, I'll take some stills and put them up and just let you have a look at those for a moment before we move on to something else. Okay, and the final thing I've been working on is carrying on with my Bojas project. So you may have seen a previous video where I mentioned that I'd made another purchase from Castaway Arts in Australia, and what I added into that purchase a some replacements for some figures that were broken in transit in a previous order. So I was missing a camel and a horse for my Tuareg, so I've painted those up now, and the riders I'd actually painted a long time ago, so they were just sitting in my collection waiting to be glued onto the camel and the horse. So I now have the Tuareg force as I intended it to be, with the correct numbers, and probably in the fairly near future I'll put up another bat rep of the men who would be kings, with the Tuareg army as I intended it to be. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And then I've painted quite a few, well, not quite a few, several other figures for the Beau Geste projects. I'll show you those next. Okay, so I've painted another 3 Berbers, mounted Berbers from the 1898 range, which is available in the UK through Empress Miniatures. So these are Berbers with rifles and traditional hairstyles. So I think I've now got 12 mounted Berbers, so that force is coming along quite nicely. Really like that figure there, firing the rifle, the pose with the rifle resting on the sort of bent elbow. I think that's really sort of novel. Probably the way that the Berbers actually fought, and firing from their mounts. But I just think it's really cool. And then I've also painted another figure from the 1898 range. Now this is Al-Raizuni, or Al-Raizuli, a historical character, one of the leaders of the Rif rebellion in Morocco, and as I say, a historical character, but this figure is very much based on the portrayal of Al-Raizuli, they call him in the film, and that's how he's mainly known in the English tongue, but his proper name is Al-Raizuni. This is the character as portrayed by Sean Connery in the film The Wind and the Lion. Great film if you haven't seen it, really worth watching. But a highly fictionalised, as always with the cinema, and not the true appearance of the historical character. But this is, I'll put up a still from the film so you can see this is very directly based on the Sean Connery character in the cinema version. So I've painted the horse, tried my best to paint the horse as it appears in the film. It's got the very kind of pronounced sort of dappled area on its rear. So although that looks a little bit exaggerated on the figure, that is actually how the horse appears in the film. And the Sean Connery, he does wear sort of black robes for a lot of the film, but in one part of the film he's wearing this kind of western tunic with a kind of, I suppose it's goat skin or something around his shoulders, and a sort of very sort of dull green turban. It makes him almost look like he's wearing sort of western kind of military clothing. But a nice figure, and he's going to do as a sort of leader figure in my games. So that's all my painting, but even though I showed you fairly recently all my book and DVD acquisitions, I have managed to acquire a fair amount more, so I'll show you those now. While we're on the subject of Beau Geste, I'll show you this one first. I've already got 2 copies of Beau Geste, but I saw this on sale and had to buy it because it's illustrated as well, so it adds just a little bit more, a little bit more to the my whole Beaugest infatuation. Pictures are very I don't know, stylized in sort of 1920s kind of style. Let's try and get some of the when he's actually in the Legion to show you. There we go. Propping up the bodies in the dead bodies into the niches in the wall of Fort Zinderneuf. In the same shop, not really wargaming related, but certainly history related, I spotted this and had to have this. It looks like a very kind of comprehensive account of history of Dartmoor, and also the guy who wrote it, Matthew Kelly, is a geologist, so it's kind of a summation of my walks on the moor with my friend, because I'm interested in history and he's interested in the geology, so we talk about both as we're going around, and it's illustrated as well. And my favourite book on Dartmoor is called High Dartmoor by a very famous Dartmoor authority called Eric Hemery. But he wrote that in the 1950s. So this is quite nice in that it's a very kind of similar, all-embracing approach to the story of Dartmoor, but brings it up to date. So there's a lot on the politics of national parks and all that kind of thing. So I'm going to enjoy reading that. Then in another shop, I found this Mort d'Arthur, the Sir Thomas Malory. When did he write it? In the 15th century. Complete, unabridged, and a new illustrated edition. So the language is very, of the time, and so it's not going to be the easiest to read, but it's got some lovely illustrations both in colour and in black and white, and a bit like the Beaugest book, I just like seeing illustrations of stories and so on, and it will kind of lend itself to inspiration for painting figures and so on as well. So that's that. Then in another shop I found this. Wasn't going to buy it at first, but then I've already got, this is part of the Longman series of histories of Europe, and I've already got the 16th, 17th, 18th and 19th centuries, so I thought I might as well get this one. It's the 14th and 15th centuries. It's the second edition, and all of my other books in this series have a different cover design and so on, so it doesn't quite fit in that respect, but I thought it was a nice book to add to my library. Bit of a shame though, obviously someone was using this as a bookmark. It's for a drug that reduces post-operative respiratory complications, so never a good sign when you see that kind of thing in a book that you find in a used bookshop. So it's probably sadly passed away. And then in two separate shops I found books on a very similar subject. This one is called The Byzantine Wars, and it deals with battles and campaigns of the Byzantine era. So I've got a sort of Byzantine warband that I originally used for Saga, but I've played Lion Rampant with it since. So it'll be a little bit of inspiration for that. And it covers from the time of Justinian all the way up to the 11th and 12th centuries. So, plenty of source material for, finding scenarios for games and so on in that. Quite a lot of colour photographs in the middle of the book. And I think there are plenty of maps and so on. Battles against the Normans and so on. So very glad to get hold of that. And then, as I say, in a different different bookshop, different charity shop, but on the similar kind of theme, I got this, which I thought was really intriguing. 20 Battles That Shaped Medieval Europe by Yorgos Theotokis. But you can guess from his name that is of I think he's of Greek origin originally, and his emphasis is far more on battles in the sort of on the eastern side of Europe. Although he does cover battles such as Hastings and so on, but there's a lot of stress on battles that took place in the Balkans and in Eastern Europe in general, including a battle that's often fascinated me, the Battle of Nicopolis in 1396, which are often considered kind of wargaming. There's Hastings. But yeah, this is almost pristine, this book. I hope that's not a bad sign that someone just, tried it, gave up on it straight away. It was only published in 2019, so it's only about 4 years old. Nice pristine condition. But I think that's going to be a pretty good read. So that's all the additional books that I've got, and that's only in the last sort of fortnight maybe that I've picked all those up, because I did do another separate video recently on the subject of my books and DVDs that I've been buying. Also in a charity shop I found this. I only had to pay £1 for it, so I thought it was worth picking up. I've got quite a few Kurosawa films on DVD, but I haven't actually got this one, Yojimbo, which was a sort of inspiration really for A Fistful of Dollars, the Clint Eastwood film. It's the same plot, only transferred from the Japan to the Wild West. So that's a very kind of similar story to The Seven Samurai, which inspired the what was it? The Magnificent Seven, the Western. But ironically, Kurosawa himself had been heavily influenced by the John Ford movies of the 50s and 60s. So there's a Western feel to these samurai films in their own right. So it's sort of bouncing the influences backwards and forwards across the globe. And then from Amazon, I purchased another 2 DVDs. This one I've watched already. I can remember it being on television back, I think it was 2018. Troy, The Fall of a City. Wasn't too taken with it when it was on telly, but I thoroughly enjoyed watching this again, because I sort of binge watched it all in 1 or 2 sittings, and it's given me an inclination to go back and paint some more of those Ridout figures I've got for the Trojan War, But yeah, watching it again, I thought it was really high of a high standard. The battle scenes in it are pretty impressive, but I thought the acting and the whole approach they took to it was very good as well, and the interpretation of the mythology. So if you haven't seen this, I can recommend it. It doesn't have the same kind of feel to it as the movie Troy. That was far more of a kind of epic kind of feel. This is more, you know, a tragedy, a portrayal of a tragedy with some very good acting in it. So yeah, I can recommend that. And I haven't watched this yet, but it's fresh in my mind from it being on television, and just decided I wanted to have it on DVD because it was such a worthy series. SAS Rogue Heroes, nothing like a historical depiction of the Second World War, but just fantastic, kind of boy's own sort of account of the foundations, you know, the formation of the early days of the SAS. Yeah, really, it was, you know, laugh a minute, I thought, when I saw that on telly, so I thought I'd get that. And that is everything. Everything I've got painted, everything I've purchased recently. So thanks very much for watching. See you on the next video. Bye for now.